I call this October 12th, 2023 Board of Education Work Session meeting to order at 7:04 PM. George, can you take the roll?
Sure. Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Mrs. Cobain?
Here.
Mr. Miko?
Here.
Ms. Stachek?
Here.
And Mrs. Hausum? Not present.
Can you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda tonight, as always, is district goals. I'll remind you that they are academic achievement and growth, financial prudence, and community engagement. And I'm not going to speak specifically to those three tonight because I think we have really fantastic examples of all of them, with Aaron Green here today talking about the state report card results. And later on, we'll talk about the facilities committee and their recommendation, which demonstrates the financial prudence and community engagement. Next item on our agenda is public comment. I don't have any slips. Is there any public that wishes to speak? We'll move on to item C, agenda changes, and I'm going to turn it over to George.
Hey, Mrs. Bissell, since the agenda was published on Monday, we had the following changes all under agenda section L, Board of Education Other. There were 3 items that were removed. So removal of action item, Master Facility Plan for the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, Expedited Local Partnership Program, removal of action item Ohio Facilities Construction Commission Expedited Local Partnership Half-Mill Maintenance Requirement, removal of action item Ohio Facilities Construction Expedited Local Partnership Agreement, and then to replace those are 2 addition of action items. First amended Master Facility Plan for the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission Expedited Local Partnership Program, and then addition of action item Ohio Facilities Construction Commission Expedited Local Partnership First Amended and Restated Project Agreement. What generated these changes, as you'll see once we get down to those sections, is we received the, when we built the agenda, we received an example of the project agreement, and then when they sent it this morning, it was a revision from our prior, what they asked us to approve was different than the template. So it was revisions to the current master facilities plan that's down in Ohio, down with the OFCC, so it just changed the language.
Thank you, George. It appears that we don't have any items under Treasurer's report tonight. Is
No
that
items
correct?
tonight.
All right, we'll turn it over to Dr. Iba for the superintendent's report.
Thanks, Ms. Bissell. We have a couple presentations tonight. We're going to start off with Aaron Green, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, for the annual presentation on the state report card. So this is something by law now we have to do, but we've done it for many years in the past. And so she has put together some slides to give an overview of how we did this past school year. So I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Thank you. I do want to thank the board for this opportunity to showcase some of the great work being done in our district. As Dr. Ryba said, the state publishes report cards annually. I will go through tonight predominantly our district report card, but there are also school building report cards for each of our buildings. At the conclusion, I'll show you where you can access any of those should you be interested. And as said, there are a couple presentations tonight, so I will keep this relatively brief. However, I don't want to dishonor the great work that's being done. So if there are questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Otherwise, I can follow up this week, next week. So starting off, overview of this year's report card. So this is the 22-23 report card. Very similar to last year's, if you recall that. The new addition is that there's an overall rating, and that is true for both the district holistically and each building. That's rated 1 through 5. They are considered stars, and they can be half-star increments. So a district could get 2.5 stars, et cetera. There are still 5 rated components we'll see. Those are in full star increments. There's still the college career workforce readiness component is still report only. That's at least through next year. We may start to see a report on that or an actual rating. So this is what makes up the overall rating. as I just said, there are 6 components, only 5 of them actually contribute. If you can see, each of the blue areas, which I'll go into momentarily, are one of the measures, but they may have subcomponents. So achievement and progress, that is the sole measure. Then we have early literacy component, which is comprised of 3 measures. Graduation is 2 measures, and the gap closing is 6. So as we go into our rating system, this will be true of all slides and across all of the ratings. 3-star, starting there, it means we meet state standards. So if you see 3 stars, that is equivalent to we're doing what is being asked of us. We're meeting the state standards. Moving up, 4 stars, 5 stars, you can see the language there. 4 stars is exceeding them. 5 stars equals significantly exceeding state standards. And similarly, moving down, 2 stars needs support to meet the standards, and 1 star needs significant support. So from all of those components, they put together a holistic grade, which I'll share momentarily. This is just a little bit more about each of those components. And this has not changed as far as what they're measuring, a little bit about how they're getting that. But as far as what they're measuring, it hasn't changed in the past few years. So you can see achievement, that is looking at how we as a district are performing each student, and are we making gains where they test. So are we trying to grow each student? If they scored proficient last year, can we get them to accelerated, accomplished, or advanced? Early literacy is our grades K, 1, 2, and 3, and how we're doing with those measures. Graduation is 4-year and 5-year. That always lags behind 1 year, so we'll look at the class of 22's data. Progress is the one that we really look at because it's the growth. So, whether kids are quote-unquote passing the test, the growth is showing, are we growing students year to year from the expected growth? Gap closing has to do with all of our subgroups. Are we growing all of the groups and not just certain kids? And then college, career, workforce, military, that has to do with how prepared our kids are as they leave our high school. I draw your attention to the different weightings of the components. So if you can't see that, you'll see achievement and progress are weighted heavier. So those are 26.6% each of the report card. So that's where the bulk of the ratings come from. Between those two, it's around 57%. And then the other 3 make up the remaining percentages. So our district received a 5-star rating, significantly exceeding the state standards. So that is absolutely something to celebrate. There were 75 districts in the state of Ohio out of 608, I believe, that got a 5-star rating. Here is our overall report card. The first 3 lines, so our achievement, our progress, and our gap closing all received a holistic 5-star rating. Our graduation and early literacy received 4-star rating, or significantly exceeding the standard. The first component is looking at achievement, and this may be synonymous if you hear performance index as a measure. So that's looking at each student and how they're performing on the tests. What we're trying to do, as I stated earlier, is to get students to perform each year at a little bit higher level. So if they were limited last year, can we grow them to basic, which is a little bit higher? If they're proficient, can we get them to the accomplished level? And each of these categories are different weights. So the higher the student's score, the higher the weight of it is. So as an example, advanced is a 1.2 weight, whereas a limited is a 0.3. So it makes sense that, the more we can grow the students, the higher the performance level, the more points we're gonna get. If we have any untested students, they are 0 points, so anything times 0, so that, we try real hard to get all of our students tested, so we don't lose points.
Before you go on, Aaron,
Sure.
so one of the things to note about the untested students is that is not the district's lack of testing students. That typically is predominantly parents that opt out of the testing, and by law, they have to count in there. So if you take a look at, that 0.7%, The majority of those are there. Erin and her department do a phenomenal job of ensuring that whether our students are here in Strongsville or in alternative locations, that all of that testing is taken care of. It's a point of frustration across the state that we're negatively being impacted for things that are parental choice, but it's the way the law is written, and it will stand as that for the time being.
Want to also draw your attention to the percentage that's on the screen, and this is where we actually get the 5-star rating from. So it's a 90.8 percentage. The points, when you look at the columns there of the weights times the percentage of students that achieved at those levels, was 98.8. There's a possible of 108.8 points this year for districts. So that used to be a straight 120 points. They now have tried to level it a little bit by taking the top 2% of districts, or 12-ish schools, I believe, looking at what their PI was, and then using that as that base. So that's where that percentage comes from. Small to see, but if you have 90% or higher, then you earn the 5 stars. So we were kind of just at that cutoff there, significantly exceeding the state standards. For achievement, this is another way to look at it. This is trend data on the right. So the colors stand for the level of testing. So the green is our accomplished students, students that score accomplished on the test. Proficient is orange, advanced is the black color, advanced plus is the light blue at the top, and so forth. So we're trending in the right direction. You can see 2023 had a higher performance index than the previous year. You can also see that the black bar area, which is our higher students, advanced students on the test, slightly larger than the year prior as well. So we're growing students. We're not just getting them to pass a test. And that is something we're working with our teachers, our community with, because it used to be, can we pass a test? Can we get an 80% of our kids passing the test? It's no longer, can we pass a test? It's, can we get students to grow from year to year? Can we build them from where they came in? Here's the expected growth they should make. Are we getting them there? Questions on anything with the achievement? Okay, I'll keep going, and then, of course, interrupt me if you think of something. Next, we have progress. Again, this is one that is very instrumental to our work here in the district. This is looking at how students are performing year to year. So there's a set value in which they should make growth in order to show that we as a district, as teachers, as school buildings are growing kids. This comprehensive chart here is showing where we as a district have some strengths and some areas to address. So all tests, all grades overall is the top row. You can see that in ELA, we're meeting growth expectations. And again, this is 4th through 8th, plus our high school end of course exams. Math is significant evidence that we're exceeding student growth. Same with science. So overall, all tests. So that's really great work. Where we start to see some concerns and areas that we are addressing, looking at 4th grade math, looking at 7th grade math, looking at 8th grade English language arts, and then 7th grade overall, all tests. So again, these are areas that we are digging into. They're not new concerns. We've been working on them, the last month or two. However, we will have new data. October 18th, we get our value added reports. So our plan is to really dig into where are we not growing the kids, in what ways, and then continue that problem-solving process of, is it teaching, is it materials, is it the standards, where can we help to make that growth? We do have some areas to celebrate as well for progress. This is a little bit of a complex formula because they look at 2 different components. But they're looking not only at growth, but also the effect size. So how much growth did we make? How confident are we that we made growth? And then what's that effect size? So how much did we grow? So in order to get 5 stars, you need to be in that upper right-hand quadrant. The way you get there is you have a high value-added index. So your X scale on the bottom there is high. Those are the value-added index. But you also have the effect size that's high, and it needs to be at least 0.1 for the effect size. So what that means is pretty much everybody starts 3 stars in the middle, and you either move up or move down. So with our growth index, you can see on there, it's 12.2, so that moved us to the right on the value-added index. Effect size is 0.1, so that moved us high enough to fall into that 5-star quadrant. As a district,
Erin,
yeah,
can you go back to that last slide?
sure.
Those little dots, are those districts
They
or
are.
students?
Those are districts.
So districts,
And they do the same thing with buildings.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is a similar, it's very small, but just to give you an overall perception or a depiction, I guess, of where we as a district fall in progress. So we are 25th in the state, and that's out of 607 districts. The pink dots here, all of those green bars are ticks, if you will. They represent districts. So everything to the right of us would be those districts that had a higher growth index with the effect size. The pink line represents us 25th in the state. Everything to the left of us and below us are districts that didn't score as well as us for progress. So again, that puts us in the top 4% for our district progress. What that means is we're taking kids where we get them, we're growing them more than the expected growth per the state. One other area to really highlight is the high school. This was quite impressive to look at when I started looking at the buildings. Our high school ranked 5th in the state. And so out of all of the buildings, there are 3,088 buildings. Strongsville High School was the 5th in the state, higher than within the top 1%. That's a 2-year average, so that's this year's growth plus last year's averaged. When you look solely at this year, we were 1 higher, we were 4th place. So we jumped ahead of Hilliard even. So that's just an incredible feat to see that 26.86 growth index. We are growing kids an enormous amount. And our effect size is large, 0.43. So we have some certainty that we are growing the kids. So congratulations both to the district and the high school for these accomplishments.
I have another question, Erin.
Sure.
Is there an easy answer to how, like when I looked at your first chart with the green bars, and there's a lot of like meets, and there's a fair number of, below. How on earth did we end up with a 5 and in the top? Like, how did we get from that color dynamic to
Right.
where is it because of the high school? Are they offsetting these other grades?
I suspect. That would be my, if you look at the high school, you see all of these are a dark gray with a significant evidence. We do have that holistically across all grades. We have the 3 that are dark gray. So for all tests overall, there are heavier weights to the higher than there are to the lower, meaning exactly what you said. It's pulling our district to a really high rate. 26 is incredibly high. So that's going to average out to, if we had a minus 0.4, that might be a red. But when you average those, it's still going to
Okay,
pull it up higher.
thank you.
We're going to move on to gap closing. Get past this here. So again, this is looking at all of our subgroups. So we in Strongsville have 9 subgroups. And this is looking at how are we doing with our subgroups in English language arts and math, both in achievement and growth. How are we doing with our EL students, or our English learners that are coming in? And how are we doing with gifted services in general? So this was a 5-star rating. 53 out of a possible 69%, which put us at nearly 77%, equating to 5 stars. They also look at participation rate in state testing, and that's a very high number at 99.2%. So a little bit more about gap closing. The 6 measures are listed, very similar or the same as to what I just talked about there. The subgroups, again, we have 9 of the subgroups, 9 of the 10. The one that we don't have enough students in to technically qualify as a subgroup would be the American Indian or Alaskan Native. However, all of the others do. So when we start to look at, you'll see a couple graphs in the next few slides. So this is our gap closing, and it's for English language arts and math achievement. So just as a reminder, this is how well they're performing, not necessarily the growth that they're making, but are they hitting that cut score because we're performing well and we're moving kids, proficient or higher. So the red dots equal the state set goals. The different colored bars, while small, are all of our subgroups. So you can see in both achievement for English language arts and math, we surpassed the achievement levels set by the state. When you look at growth, it's a little bit different story. So you can see English language arts, we had only one of our subgroups meet the intended target score. That was the Black non-Hispanic group that did make that gain. The rest are not there yet. So this is an area, of course, you'll continue to hear this theme, but we need to continue to work on our subgroups. We want to ensure that all students are getting that equitable in education, and we're growing all students. With math, it looks a little bit better on this graph. There are some subgroups still that we did not meet, and that would be our English learners, students with disabilities, and multiracial. You will see, some of them have what I would call negative growth. So in the English language arts, the orange, multiracial, and the light blue, students with disabilities. So they didn't meet the expected growth. We need to make sure, we need to dive into that and see what we can do to work toward getting those students to close gaps and close them quicker. We know if they start behind, it's harder to close gaps. However, we as a district take pride in getting an education for every child. So that's why we have the MTSS process. That's why we're looking to grow every single kid. We don't want to just say, well, they're in a subgroup, they're not going to learn, they've reached as much. We don't say that. We move forward. So that is on our plan as well, as diving into that data, getting a little more granular with specifics there.
How, for the purpose of the state report card, how are students with disabilities defined?
Any student on an IEP.
IEP, okay, thank you.
Graduation rate is very positive. We look at a 4-year and a 5-year graduation rate. All of our subgroups met that target. The other one that I am very proud of is our English learners. The red dot is our target. We surpassed that, and this data comes from when our English language learners take the end-of-year test. So they take a test that's the OELPS, so the Ohio Assessment for Language Speaking Proficiency, not in that order. This is how we're growing kids that don't speak English as their first language. And that's really tough because we are continuing to grow that population each year. Our teachers are doing a great job at continuing to build their reading, writing, speaking abilities in English. So we are surpassing what the state has set for that target area. Moving on to graduation. I'm sorry, I forgot. There's a gifted slide here. The last part, the last 2 measures, chronic absenteeism. 14.5% of our students are what would be considered chronically absent. The goal for the state is 20% or less. So although that number may look large, it's kind of right in the ballpark of still meeting where we need to be. For our gifted component, we met the value added, 4 stars with that. Performance index was incredibly high for our students that are identified gifted. The only points we did not meet is with our identification and services. And again, this is not anything new to us. It's how are we serving our students that are gifted or identified gifted? How early are we identifying them? And what are we doing? It goes back to the high-quality professional development that we started last year. Again, it's a high target, challenging for districts to meet, but we're going to continue to take that on. Looking at graduation rate,
Aaron, chronic absence, is that the entire population or just?
it's the entire population. So it's any time a student is not in school, whether they're excused, not excused, it really doesn't matter in the eyes of the state anymore.
But it's not just the subgroups, it's all 5,500?
Correct.
Okay.
Graduation, we have 95% is our total weighted graduation. What that means is they take the 4-year graduation and the 5-year graduation. They rank the 4-year as 60%, I believe, and the 5-year is 40% of that formula. Together, that averages to a 95.3. This is one of the areas in which we earned 4 stars. So remember, as I said, this is 2 years back, so this isn't the class that just graduated, it's the prior class. We had similar data last year. We started to address this with our seniors, and especially, those looking to graduate in 4 years. I think we put some things in place, and, a big thanks to Nicole Hackman, who you'll hear from in a little bit. She did a lot of this legwork so we could get students to meet the graduation requirements in multiple pathways. So I anticipate the 4-year graduation rate moving up higher than a 94.7 in future years. Early literacy component, an area in which we earn 4 stars. 3 components make this up. It's how are we doing proficiency-wide on 3rd grade reading. So how many students in 3rd grade earned not just the 3rd grade reading guarantee score, but an actual passage of 700. How many kids did we promote to 4th grade? And then looking at K-3 literacy. So if they are at risk in kindergarten, and we look at that same cohort of students coming into 1st grade, are they still at risk, or did they move to on track? So an area that the board is very familiar with, we're working really hard to target with our science of reading and our letters training. That isn't necessarily reflected in a whole lot of this yet. We have high hopes that we are going to start closing gaps. Kids that are on RIMPs, we're putting the things into place with interventions, making sure they get what they need. So again, I may be incredibly optimistic, but I anticipate that percentage being higher once we get full implementation of science of reading and the letters training in the district. Moving on, this is college career workforce, military readiness component. Again, not measured this year officially, but there are 11 measures, and then 3 that are report out only. So we don't have an actual rating on this. Starting the 24-25 school year, we may, pending no changes. Last few slides I want to go through. As I said, every building has an actual report card. I'm showing kind of just the overall components for each of our Strongsville buildings. Hard to see, but you can kind of look at the color coding. It matches what we've had earlier. So the dark blue is the 5, the light blue 4, green is 3, yellow is 2, and 1 would be the red. So this is something that we look at carefully. We need to dig into this data and find out where and why are we having challenges with this. And this is something that Amy Penny and I are taking on for the buildings in the areas that we're seeing some areas that we feel should be higher and could be higher. So she and I are working through a plan right now. Principals are on the same page, so we need to, we need to figure out where, again, I'm waiting for that October 18th release of data, but really pinpoint where are we not making growth, for example? Where are we not achieving? How can we start to intervene more so than anything we've done yet? There is something that isn't aligned, so we need to really dive into that. Last couple slides here, comparable districts. This is something the state does where they will look at, you input your district, they give you the 20 districts in the state that are the most comparable to you based on enrollment, size, socioeconomic status, demographics, income, all of those things. So just to give kind of a ballpark view, because we're in, Cuyahoga County, we have some really, really high achieving districts. When you look across the state at our comparables as well, you see that we're right there, if not higher than the majority of these districts. So looking across, again, we have the 5 stars in 4 of the areas, 4 stars in 2 of the areas. That is higher than most of the districts on here that are our comparables. And that's something to, again, it's a report card, but it's also something to celebrate because it's indicative of all of the work that we've done over the past years. As promised, this is where you can find the report card information. So it's on the Ohio Department of Education site. You can input into the search box any building, any district, and it will pull up the same report card that I just shared with you. And that concludes the formal part of the presentation. Again, I apologize that it was relatively quick, but I'm open to any questions you may have.
I guess I just have one. When we get this additional data on
Yeah.
October 18th, how is that going to be communicated with us and the community?
It's not necessarily something that we're going to publish. A lot of it is individual teacher data, which is very highly personal and kind of locked down to that teacher. Something that we as district officials can see. So we can share it with the principals, we can share it with teachers. Internally, we share it. If it's something of importance, we can work with you to look through that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we shouldn't lose the opportunity to congratulate everyone. I like to start with the students. They're the ones who took the tests. And then the parents, they're the ones who made sure the students took the tests. And the teachers who taught, and the administrators and the staff. It was a team effort, but 5 stars is great news. I think all of us are interested in where we can get better. So I'm looking forward. We have a lot on this agenda, otherwise I'm sure we would ask
how
a
we planned
lot
it.
of questions.
Yeah.
But I will tee up the absenteeism, I think, is something that we need to unpack. I'd like to understand, the quick math is that's 800 kids that are chronically absent. And, I would like to understand that data better. Thank you. Congratulations to everyone.
Yeah, Rich, we'll put that on the agenda, and we'll also share the concerns that we have statewide with how that is measured, and what we have control over and what we don't, but still 14.5% is high, right? But I'd also like just to add, thank you for sharing your praise for all the people that do the work and the kids that do the work to get progress each and every year. I think there's a lot of data points and slides we could take a look at, but I think what I would just like to highlight is every year we're getting better. And that's really impressive when you're a high-achieving district to continue to grow and get better every day. And that's a symbol of what we believe and what everybody part of the organization does. And I just don't want to underestimate the fact that the measure in this report card that talks about how we're growing kids, no matter where they're at, puts this district in the top 4% of all school districts in the state and puts the high school in the top 0.2%, that's something that should be talked about constantly and celebrated, because what that measure says is it doesn't matter how you enter our schools, that we will help you to grow and progress and to be on your pathway for success moving forward. And I think that's something to celebrate and to be proud of as a community, and know that although this is all great news, and as I've said multiple times in my communications, it's a time to celebrate. It's a time to be proud of the work that we're doing. But I also know that based on the folks that we have here, that it's always looking at what is the next step for where we can improve and get better and address. So congratulations to everybody that you said, Rich, as well as Amy, Nicole, and Aaron, and all of our folks that help support our teaching and instruction program for all of the work to help our kids achieve the best they possibly can. So at this time, we're going to give Aaron a little break. Aaron was instrumentally involved in the work that we're going to talk about next, as was Andy Trujillo. But Amy and Nicole are going to come up, supervisors of elementary and secondary curriculum. They really have done the lion's share of the work in this area, and wanted to give them an opportunity to present to you. These are mandates, okay? These are state mandates, new laws that were passed. Was it last year in the budget bill?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Some of these laws were last year, and
Recent.
some were in the budget bill, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got new laws that were passed in the recent history that have to be in place this school year. And so what Nicole and Amy are going to share with you is, what do each of these laws mean, and what does it look like, and what's the process we're going to go through to inform parents. So there's a lot to this, and I'll turn it over to Amy and Nicole to highlight that for us.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the elementary part of this, and then I'll hand it over to Nicole. Hers is a little bit lengthier. We're first going to talk about the implementation of Aaron's Law, which is Senate Bill 288. This is a law that's starting this year with our K-12 students, and it requires districts to provide developmentally appropriate instruction on child sexual abuse prevention in K to 6. I'll talk a little bit more about that and how that looks in our elementary buildings. And then dating violence prevention and sexual violence prevention in 7 to 12, and Nicole will speak about that. So Aaron's Law, with this mandate, we have to, as a district, provide a curriculum dealing with these topics, and provide also an opt-out opportunity for our families who may want that. We have letters that will be sent out, and this is K-12 still, but we'll have letters that go out to our families that talk about what's going to be in the content, what the curriculum looks like, maybe some topics that might be discussed. And then with that letter, there's also an opt-out form should parents and families choose to do so. And so we have links to each elementary letter. The K-3, the content is very similar, so we lumped them into one. In 4th and 5th grade, it gets a little bit more in depth, and then obviously the middle school and the high school are a little bit different as well. So we have those on there. For our elementary buildings, we're going to have our elementary school counselors teach this content to our students. They have to go through this content annually, so they will be going into our classrooms. They already go into our classrooms once a month at least and have class lessons. So they're just going to continue this as part of their work. What they're going to use, so right now our elementary counselors use a program called Second Step. We've used that for years. And so what they are doing, they went through the ODE website and looked at some recommended materials that we could use as part of this instruction. And so one of those options was a secondary component to that Second Step program. And after looking at all of the materials, our school counselors decided this would be, a nice way to blend what we're already doing to adding this into our instruction or their instruction. So it is ODE recommended. The content is developmentally appropriate, age appropriate for our students, and they felt strongly that this was, the way to go. Up here, you'll see some of the lesson objectives that are in this second step program. Not all of these may be taught. This is just the full program that comes with the second step program. What they're going to do, I'll have you move to the next slide, I think. What they're going to do with those objectives is they're going to, on our November PD day, they're going to have some time to look through that entire curriculum. Those, I think there's like 6 lessons or 6 units. They're going to look through that, look specifically at every lesson, what's taught in it, what's appropriate, and then decide what lessons from there they might teach. So they might not teach all of those lessons. That's just part of the whole program. So after they do that in November, they're going to start implementing their lessons after January. And what we will do is, that's your slide next. What they'll do is 3 to 4 weeks prior to them starting this instruction, they will have letters either emailed or sent home via principals, from the counselors to say, hey, in 3 to 4 weeks, we're going to start our instruction on this. Send the letter, and then there's that option for that opt-out form for them. So they'll have that opportunity, plenty of time to get that opt-out form back to school if they should choose. So that's my part.
Okay, at the secondary level, Aaron's Law looks slightly different in that it impacts specifically health curriculum. It's unlike K-5, where it has to be annually, presented annually. This only needs to be presented in health classes. So we'll be presenting it in Health 6 and Health 8. Health 6 falling under the K-6 rule, actually, with the annual presentation. Health 8, because it affects 8th grade health curriculum, that's when our students take health at the middle school beyond 6th grade, and then at the high school level, only in the health course. The content there, we selected the suggestion from ODE to use the Speak Up curriculum. So there's 2 bands. There's a 6th and 8th grade band, which is called Speak Up Empowered, and then Speak Up Freedom, which is the high school health component. They'll be presented by our social workers at both the middle school and the high school, along with the health teachers. So they'll be co-presenting these lessons within those courses. The curriculum for 6th grade, 8th grade, and high school, they look pretty similar. If you look at the objectives are similar, but the content changes along with the age level of the student. So they're developmentally appropriate. This is going to happen, this will begin this semester, towards the end of this semester, in Health 8 and in high school health. Our social workers and health teachers have already been trained to present this. It's available to us through our public school works, so they were trained to present it already, and they are ready to present this. They will give a 2-week window prior to the presentation, at least a 2-week window for parents to be notified and have an opportunity to opt their children out if they chose to do so. 6th grade, because 6th grade health is on a quarter schedule, we've missed first quarter. It ended today. So we've missed first quarter for 6th grade. So we've opted for this year only. We'll be presenting this in January. All of our counselors and our social workers our social worker at the middle school will be working together to present to the 6th graders. Instead of embedding it within 6th grade health, it'll be in January, February, beginning of the new year for our students. Then it will then be placed in subsequent years within the Health 6 curriculum. And again, like I said, end of second semester for Health 8. Some Health 8 students, other Health 8 students will have it at the end of second semester because that's a semester course. And same with the high school, it'll be at the end of the semester where those students have health. That brings us to House Bill 123, the Save Students Act. This affects only secondary students. Okay, so it's 6-12, beginning this school year. There are 3 topics that need to be covered: social inclusion, suicide awareness and prevention, and violence prevention. There's no blanket opt-out. It's different from Aaron's Law in that there's no blanket opt-out required. Our families were notified about 2 weeks ago via school messenger, all of our 6-12 parents, that these lessons would happen. The one way this is different at the secondary level than Aaron's Law is that it needs to be presented every year. So it impacts health curriculum, but because not all kids have health, we had to find a place to embed these lessons within the 6-12 grade levels. What does it look like? Presented annually. We've selected, now the ODE Unlike Aaron's Law, where they made suggestions as far as curriculum, we have to select from the ODE approved list. We've selected Sandy Hook Promise Start with Hello for social inclusion, which is a program we've used in the past. That is not new to us. We'll be using Erica's Lighthouse for suicide awareness and prevention and violence prevention. Social inclusion component, like I said, Sandy Hook, we've been doing it before. Here are the objectives for Erica's Lighthouse for suicide awareness, prevention, and violence prevention. Grade 6 objectives. 7 and 8 are going to be doing a different grade band lesson that's appropriate for that age group. And then at the high school level, grades 9 through 12 will be doing these objectives. Our counselors have reviewed these programs and they've been quite impressed with what's there for our students. It's very developmentally appropriate. A focus on mental wellness, a focus on self-awareness, self-regulation, and making good choices. This will occur in different places depending on the grade level. As you can see, middle school is easier because pretty much every student takes Health 6, Wellness 7, and Health 8, so we'll reach all of them within those classes. We gotta be a little bit more creative. At the high school level, they'll be receiving them health, economics, speech, and then English 12. Our solo students, Erica's Lighthouse was really kind. They let us adapt the lessons for online presentations. So we'll be making some pear decks that'll be available to our middle school solo students and our online students at the high school. We'll also make those available to students who might be missing like English 12 because they're taking CCP. Or they might be missing econ because they took it during summer school for credit advancement. So we're working those through so all students will at least have access to these lessons. If you'd like more information, we have a list of resources for you. Yes.
So I know it's a lot of information on two different laws, and as I said earlier, I appreciate Amy and Nicole's efforts to do all the work to get this up and running and meet these mandates, but wanted to present the resource and the information to the board. This presentation is on and linked and accessible to all of our families on the board docs for the board agenda. People could access that, and as I said, at least 2 weeks prior to any of this happening, folks will get notice of, here's what's going on, here's the lessons. Because of timing, I know, as you said, we had something for the SAVE Act go out already, and I know Erin and her team has gotten a few questions and answered those, and things have moved pretty smoothly so far. So, any questions from the board members about either of these laws that we have to implement?
So at the grade school level, how many actual days or sessions of instruction are we talking? Is this one day a year, 2 days a year?
I was talking to a few counselors actually this week, and so they're thinking that because they go in monthly, they're thinking that once they compile the lessons they want, it might be one of their monthly lessons, or it might be 2. So it's not gonna take a lot of extra, instructional time, but they are going to kind of prioritize what things are more appropriate for which grade levels and then teach them that way. So they're just going to use the time that they're usually in their class.
And at the high school?
Are you talking about Aaron's Law or the SAFE students? Because they're
Yes.
different. Yes,
Yes.
okay. Aaron's Law is one lesson, okay, embedded within those courses, and ultimately Health 6. With the Safe Students Act, the state dictates that we have to use a certain amount of time, but then they also dictate that whatever curriculum you select, you have to do it with fidelity based on that program. So for Start with Hello, that's a week-long set of lessons that are done. The Erica's Lighthouse, there's 3 lessons that are done. There's an optional 4th lesson that's an assessment if like the health teachers want to use it.
So the only question I had going through it is you have an opt-out form, but we don't even know what lessons we're necessarily teaching. So once that's determined, we should be able to communicate that to the parents. Because if I'm putting myself in the parents' shoes, on the one hand, it's awful that we have to teach this stuff. On the other hand, it's incumbent on us to teach this stuff. But for a parent to make an informed decision for their child, they need to know what they're going to teach.
And we have links in that letter that give a little bit of a brief outline of some objectives that will be in the lesson, so at least parents and families can look at that and kind of see briefly like an outline of what their their children might be taught in the classroom. So-
And I agree. I'm saying if I'm a parent and this is important, I'm not going to want a general outline. I'm not going to want a menu of choices. I'm going to want to know what is the curriculum that they decided to do at the Pro Dev Day.
I will say that for the suicide and depression awareness lessons, those were things that were in our curriculum, especially in health anyway. We've just selected the specific curriculum to use. Those objectives have been health objectives for a long time.
Yep.
And Rich, to just make sure I'm clear on your question, in November, we're going to have the professional development. They're going to go through it and see. We're not doing the lessons until after the first of the year. So once we decide what lessons we're going to use, the opt-out letters, although drafted, will be fine-tuned into what exactly is happening. That way parents can, that's the pathway,
Right.
correct? Okay. And that meets what you're asking for, yeah. Any other questions? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Next up, we have a business service report. Mr. Bruckner.
Good evening, everyone. Move this out a little bit. One item for your consideration tonight in this section. Be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education accepts the proposal from BNC Communications for digital bus radios for the district school buses not to exceed $49,711.50. Be it further resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education makes additional quotes as prescribed in Board Policy 6320. Pardon?
Waives additional.
Oh, waives, sorry. Oh, sorry, waives. Additional quotes as prescribed in Board Policy 6320. Purchasing and bidding as price negotiations would not result in savings to the district.
This requires action, so can I have a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Motion by Haley, seconded by Sharon. Steve, can you give us
Sure.
an explanation?
So we started down this road about 5 years ago. We started buying digital radios for the buses. However, digital radios work with analog signal. Right now, we have a repeater that's solely analog. However, as part of our safety and security plan, we are moving our repeater to a digital format. When it moves to a digital format, the analog radios will no longer work in that format. Now, the reason why we're moving to a digital format is it will allow us to have better, clear communication across the district in case of an event that needs to have communication via handheld radio from one side of the district to the other. So, for example, right now, there's a lot of handheld devices at Whitney. However, because it's analog, that radio frequency will not reach to Kinsner if there was a reason for them to communicate with one another. The digital footprint, which has been tested by BNC Communications, we've purchased the infrastructure to do that, the additional repeater that's digital. Now we will be able to have handheld radio communication across the district in the case of an emergency. Even in the case of like a cell tower going down, the hand radios will still work. Also, well, for this purpose, we have to speed up the timeline. We can't just buy 5 or 6 at a time for the buses. We need to purchase the additional, because as soon as we do turn on that digital repeater and go complete digital format, then 46 of our buses will go silent on our new format. So this is just, it's something that has already started. This is just finishing the job. And again, the precursor to all this is I'm working with BNC Communications for a fairly substantial replacement of our handheld radios. So this is all going towards that safety and security grant, getting us to be able to communicate a lot more efficiently. This is just a piece of that. This is not part of the safety and security grant because this isn't, that's apportioned to individual buildings. The buses are not part of an individual building, so I cannot apply the federal funds for that. So this has to come out of the permanent improvement funds But again, it's all with the idea that we're improving communications throughout the district.
So at the end of the master plan, we'll all be on one system, and all walkie-talkies can talk to all walkie-talkies.
Correct. And we also have the capability with digital format to create different channels, different levels. We can blast through different groups. So for example, let's say we create a group for students with special needs in those individual teams. If we needed to blast through that channel and say, everybody, there's an emergency in a situation, we would have the capability to do that. So this not only gives us clearer communication across the district, more immediate communication across the district, but it gives us more capabilities to communicate throughout the district.
Do we need to do anything, or is it already baked in to have communication with our city safety forces?
That's already baked in. B&C is also linked with them as well. And that is the reason for the secondary part of that. To go and get quotes, we would have to have quotes from someone all the way back to the infrastructure that we've already purchased, and purchasing not just these radios for the buses, but every bus, since the frequencies are not proprietary, but the way that they access the frequencies are proprietary. So if we go with any other communication system, they can't join with the one we have currently. We'd have to start back at square one. So fiscally, it's not feasible to go with another vendor or another company because that would cost more money for the district.
I just have one other question, kind of looking forward. If you could get back to us at some point about what other technology do we need to purchase to keep the transportation department functioning at its best? So something that comes to mind for me from conversations is we have one-to-one for students in terms of technology. Is that a need for the bus drivers? Is there a need for a tablet or something else moving forward to make that run as smoothly as possible? So if you could at some point get back to us with what other technology needs, even beyond that we might be looking at.
I can.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bissell?
Yes, motion carries.
Next, we have Aaron Green back up with our curriculum items for this month. Aaron?
All right, so I have just two items tonight for you. They are both revisions due to increased enrollment and/or teacher increases. Item 1 is a revision to the letters, participant materials, and licenses. So this is out of the ESSER 3 funds. Revision to the agenda from August 3rd, 2023, that was under Superintendent's Report, Curriculum, number 5F. Letters, participant materials, and license, total cost increased from $57,456 to $60,648 to include all hired intervention specialists per the dyslexia law mandate. So part of the law is that we also train all of our 6th through 12th grade teachers in the same letters components. We just didn't have quite enough calculated into the original budget in which we asked. The second item is, again, a revision, this one for Studies Weekly ELA supplement from the general fund. Revision from the April 27th, 2023. It was H, Superintendent Report Curriculum, item 4, Studies Weekly ELA supplement. Total cost increased from $41,707.28 to $42,689.96 due to increased enrollment. So again, we take our best guess in April as to how many we're going to need per class. They come in bundles of 30. We just didn't estimate quite enough, which is a good thing because we have more students.
Aaron, do you know offhand what grades use Studies Weekly?
K through 5 should for social studies, and then K2 for science.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Next, Andy Trio, Director of Student Services, for his item for tonight. Andy?
Good evening. I have one item for your consideration, and that is PSI affiliates. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education enters into an agreement with PSI affiliates in the amount of $37,905.02 for the Intervention Specialist Services to serve students at St. Joseph St. John's School, effective September 28th, 2023. Any questions? All right, thanks.
Thanks, Andy.
I will add, this is the St. Joseph and John's pass-through dollars
That
through
is
IDEA for them to utilize.
Thank you.
And we have a few items for Human Resources, so I'll turn over to Jenny.
Thank you. I have 2 items for your consideration. Under number 1, resignation for a non-certificated staff member. And under 2, we have the retirement of a certificated staff member for the end of this year. And that concludes my report.
And unless there's any questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Ryba. At this point, we've reached item K, the consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education in adoption of consent calendar at this point of the agenda means that all items appearing in this agenda denoted as type action consent, which items constitute the consent calendar, are adopted by one single motion unless a member of the board or the superintendent requests that such items be removed from the consent calendar and voted upon separately. Do I have any requests to move any items? Okay. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Motion by Haley, seconded by Sharon. Any questions or concerns? George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes, motion carries. And at this point, we are to Board of Education Other. We have the Elementary Facilities Planning Committee Master Facilities Plan recommendation to hear this evening.
Yeah, so I'd like to ask David Ebersol and Ken Evans to come to the podium as 2 representative members of our 60-person committee to share their recommendation with you this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Ryba. The board authorized a committee to study the elementary buildings and develop a master plan to address the district going forward. The community process engaged a number of meetings beginning in 2023 here. There were over 100 people who participated. That included parents with children in the schools, parents of graduates, community group representatives, school staff, and other interested persons. And there was also a survey that was done that included over 500 responses about the nature of the future of elementary schools in the district. The basis for the process was a 2008 study done by the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. You'll hear that referred to as OFCC. This is an agency within the state of Ohio that determines the requirements for buildings and evaluates buildings based on their educational resources. That study in 2008 showed that we had a lot of things that we needed to improve. The study from 2008 was updated in 2022 by GPD, a school design firm here in Ohio. And the school board then did also commission a professional study to be done to update the student enrollment, which was last done back in around 2008 as well. That 10-year enrollment projection plus the updated study of building facilities done by GPD gave the committee a basis then to take a look at the elementary schools and the future for our district. The group started with a clean canvas. They looked at a wide range of solutions to address our schools. A variety of options were considered. This included a single elementary school, which some of the districts around us have done. It included grade-banded buildings, which other districts have done, and some districts have maintained neighborhood school buildings, as we currently have. Discussions and evaluations were done on each of those situations, and the pros and cons were looked at for all of those as a part of the process. There were a total of 8 meetings during the year that resulted in a recommendation then. So the existing elementary schools that we have here in Strongsville are all 50 years or older, except Kinsner, which is the youngster in the group. There are challenges to 50-year-old buildings. We know that because when we did work at the high school as a part of the last bond project, when you open up walls, there are lots of things that can happen. To get us back to OFCC standards, which require a lot of things for health, education, and safety standards, would be a rather monumental task. We looked at the elementary buildings as they are now over capacity, trying to anticipate what those needs would be. Again, that 10-year enrollment project or projection helps us with that. There are immediate needs in the elementary schools that we know about as a result of the 2008 and 2022 evaluation of the buildings. Those include roofs, HVAC systems, water and sewer, and many other additional safety features in the schools that would need to be addressed were we to move forward with getting the buildings that we currently have up to standard. As we take a look at the considerations then, the group looked at that entire package, trying to look at a master plan that would get us from here to there. Early on, the committee determined that the cost of renovations, which were projected as a part of that 2008 and then reaffirmed in 2022, to be higher than what was appropriate by OFCC standards. Their standard is if it takes more than 67% of a value to repair, renovate, and replace things, then at that point their estimation is that a new building should be done. So the OSC standards for 67% replacement applied to 4 of the elementaries that we have. Kinsner was not a part of that, but we had to determine then, based on the numbers that were presented, and that totaled up about $38 million for repairs and renovations to the current elementaries, to replace 3 of those schools and do a partial replacement at Muraski, then totaled $50 million. So it was $38 million for repair, $50 million for replacement. Those numbers changed as we progressed through our evaluations because we came up with a little bit different configuration, so it was not a one-to-one replacement. But the bottom line was that renovation of the schools was an expensive proposition, given that it might only get us another 15 years down the road, and replacement would be a then better option to consider. We were required to invest tremendous resources in order to make those repairs. Some of those repairs are ones that need to be completed now, and a part of our evaluation looked at roofing and things that are in a stage where we really can't Band-Aid it much longer. And so one of the things that we also considered was the facilities and the way that they are currently being used at overcapacity and the need to have more space as that enrollment projected going forward. So the building evaluations then, and these figures were presented by GPD at the report that they did to you as well, basically show that it would cost a lot of money to do renovation and repair. It would cost a lot more money to do replacement, but the value that the replacement would get us out another 50, 60 years or perhaps longer, and the repairs would only get us about 15 years. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to David Ebersol. David is another one of the people who served on that committee.
Great. Thanks. Good evening. My name is David Ebersol. I have a daughter who's in the 2nd grade at Sarar. I have a 2-year-old son as well. We moved back to the district a year ago, but I graduated from Strongsville High School longer than I want to remember. Spent a lot of time in this building, actually. So I have worked most of my career in public real estate finance space and in community engagement space, and just want to say thank you to the board and commend the administration on the process and the participation here. It was really, having been on both ends of that process, it was really one of the best processes that I've had the opportunity to participate in. So I'm going to deliver the punchline, I guess. Our committee determined, I think pretty early on, as Ken said, that the cost to renovate existing buildings was not a good investment, that we would be spending substantial amount of resources to bring our systems back up to a modern requirement without really impacting our educational experience. That renovation would not solve our efficiency problems, would not solve our capacity problems, and ultimately would be a short-term solution, because we would go through this process, we would spend these resources, and we would wind up with buildings that are 70 years old that we're then trying to get to 100 years old through this process. So then we went on to what do we think is the future, and the committee preferred neighborhood K-5 schools to abandoned school process. We felt that we wanted to maintain our communities to the extent that they would be, that you would have easier transportation, especially going from the west side of the city to the east side of the city. That we did not want to have large elementary schools with 1,200, 1,500 kids in one school, and that at that point you're building the same amount of schools between a neighborhood school and a banded school anyway, and for the reasons noted above, preferred the neighborhood schools. In addition, the committee was challenged to consider what other facility needs that we had at the time. Our early childhood facilities are located in multiple buildings that were not built for use as a preschool. We have performance art facilities that are below the standards of a number of our peers. We have athletic facilities that are starting to reach the point where they are requiring modernization, require some capital investment and maintenance to maintain parity. Our elementary facility plan should include play areas and fields that are durable community assets, not just grass. We should be thoughtful of that. And we have a current administration building that faces many of the same problems that our elementary schools face. We're a 60-year-old building that was not built for the use that it is. So, where did we land? The committee, after consideration, felt that the best proposal is as follows: to replace Chapman and Sarar Elementaries with new facilities on the same site, to replace Whitney Elementary with a new facility on the former Albion Middle School site, to renovate Kinsner Elementary to a near peer quality with these new buildings, to rebuild portions and renovate portions of Muraski Elementary to serve as a centralized preschool facility, as well as a new home for our administrative offices, for a realignment then of our student population amongst those schools, and to include multi-purpose fields as part of the development of our elementary schools. In addition, we would, as mentioned, relocate those administrative offices to the Muraski site, which would allow for then the decommissioning of this building. We would construct a field house facility for sports and community use, preferably on the high school grounds. We would renovate our high school auditorium to bring that back up to peer standards. We would renovate the Catan Stadium to address our pressing current and our future maintenance and amenity needs. We would renovate the middle school auditorium to address changes in software and lighting since that facility was built. We would add lighting to the sports field at that middle school, and we would replace baseball, softball, and other fields as needed with new durable turf fields if possible. All told, we feel that this is a wise use of resources, that it is cost conscious, and it creates a long-term solution for the next 50 years of our district, as opposed to a renovation plan, which, you know, as Ken mentioned, we think we'll be back here in 10 or 15 years trying to solve the same problems. So, that, I think, concludes our presentation.
This is an item that requires action, so I will read that and then we will have a discussion. Be it resolved that the Strongsville City Schools Board of Education approves the Elementary Facilities Planning Committee Master Facilities Plan. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Haley, seconded by Sharon. Discussion.
So I'd like to start just by thanking the members of the elementary, that's a tortured name. Elementary
We need an
Facilities
Come on.
Planning Committee. The EFPC. It was a very condensed presentation that summarized a lot of hours. 8 meetings, 8 months. The group, Laura and I were the board liaisons to the committee, which meant we attended, we would answer questions and so on, but it really was, the idea was really that the committee did the work. And I think we did that fairly well. You know, there's always times where you want to get into the nitty-gritty, and I know I have to pull myself back. I know Laura pulled herself back, and our job was to observe, to be part of the process, but it's the committee that did the work. But we went to all the elementary schools. We, got into the nitty-gritty of it. Any type of project of this size, there's always different opinions, but there was a good respect of everyone's opinion, and more importantly, there was a common goal of coming to common ground. So I did want to start by saying thank you for that. I think the charge of the committee was to say, what is the master plan? And I'm comfortable with that the committee did the work and they did it with integrity. I think the work for the board is then to say, how do we move from this master plan to what do we want as a board to commit to and to ultimately go to the voter for the bond? And like all things, there's going to be some negotiation or discussion at that point, but I support the work, and I have no problem supporting the master plan.
Any other questions or comments? Cameron, I just want some clarity to make sure I understand. This vote is accepting that they did the work of the plan, but not necessarily approving every item on the plan?
Correct. So there's two things. They are recommending a master facilities plan. It's a long-term plan to look at what we need to do comprehensively with preschool administrative offices, elementary schools, athletic, performing arts facilities. So by voting yes for this, you are accepting the plan from the committee as presented. After that, what the board does with that, that would go under item 4. Item 4 would then be the board's decision to say, of the master facilities plan that was recommended, what aspects of that would we want to do at this time in a bond issue? So accept the plan in totality, then from there, the board decides what aspects of the plan they would like to do at what time period.
Okay, thank you.
So for example, the committee made a list, a spreadsheet, and it's been shared with all of us, and it prioritizes different levels of the project. If we had unlimited funds, and if we had unlimited belief that we would garner the voters' support, you would accept all of it and say move forward. But just like buying a house or buying a car, there may be things that we're going to say, let's buy now, or let's go to the community for a bond now, and there may be other things that we say we're going to delay. Buying a house, let's get these things now, and then maybe later we will rehab or remodel or grow beyond that. I wish we had unlimited funds. We don't, so I think that's where the rub is. But for me, the master plan is reasonable, and I don't have any reason not to support everything in the plan. It's the next steps where the rub comes in.
Sharon, Haley, anything? Before we'll enter into the larger discussion at item 4, but.
Not yet.
Yeah,
Not yet.
Okay. George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes, motion carries. Next item also requires action. Be it resolved that the Strongsville City Schools Board of Education approves the resolution to accept the first amended master facility plan for the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission Expedited Local Partnership Program as found in the exhibit. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Motioned by Haley, seconded by Sharon. George, can you speak to this for us?
Yeah, in order to continue with the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, the Expedited Local Partnership Program. First, with the, just as a refresher, what the Expedited Local Partnership Program is we're moving forward with a construction project prior to our number being called for what they call CFAP, is when traditionally they come into a district and they present a construction project, and there's a co-fundable amount and a local share amount. We're doing this in advance, and there's a co-fundable amount and a local share amount, but for the expedited program, we pay 100% of the cost of what they'll fund, and then when our number is called for CFAP, that's when we can gain those credits back, essentially. So in 2012, the district entered, let me just get to the beginning of this. In 2012, the district first entered into the OFCC Expedited Local Partnership Program with the master facilities plan of what the district was going to look like at that time. It included the demo of the center in Albion, as well as some of the elementary buildings, and then also the middle school project, the high school renovation, and the elementary building footprints at that time. Since then, with the committee's work, we've been working in partnership with the OFCC to put together a new master facilities plan of what they consider is fundable work. So they had made updates to their facility. They had made updates to the master facility plan that they're looking to fund by building and by demo. So it's a comprehensive of what's already been done, what's proposed to be done, and then if there's any future work. So in this with this stage included to what's already been done, as a comprehensive look of what's to be done, the total project budget is what they view as $179,343,000. Of that, $12 million is the state share, and the local share is $166 million. But how they look to fund is based on square footage wise. So what their recommendation was to fund 2 elementary schools, and the committee's recommendation is 3, so that additional LFI, the local funding initiative of $11 million, is then added on. So for a total project cost of $191 million, where the local share is $178 million, and the state share remains at $12 million. So that state share would be our total credit once this project is done for co-fundable projects. $4 million, of that $12 million, $4 million has already been done with past project in 2013. This current proposal would generate another $6 million. So after that's done, we would have $10 million in credit, and then the remaining $2 million would be towards what they have in their facilities plan is a $25 million addition to the high school. To be done at a later time or when our number is called for CFAP. So both this item and the following item are just revisions from the 2012 agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone have any questions?
I will just share, there's different ways to describe all of this, but the way I describe it is this is OFCC Kung Fu. It is so twisted and complicated. I wouldn't say it's complex, but I think a lot of people are familiar with other cities or other school districts where they're able to go to their taxpayers or their voters and say, for every 40 cents that you put in, the state will pay 60 cents. Strongsville, it sounds like it's not a good thing, but it's a good thing because it means we have the blessings of a established community. The state says, based on the wealth of your district, we are only going to fund your district not 60 cents for every 40 cents. It's only going to be 7 cents for every 93 cents. But in addition to that, you have to get in line. And we've been in line, George, it started in 1999, and we did the middle school project, and we're still in line, and in 2023, they're about halfway through the line. And so we probably have another 15 to 25 years before our turn comes up. But I'm supportive of this because at the end of the day, eventually our line will happen. And if we go back to what we did with the middle school and the high school, we're banking those dollars, and by the time we get the $10 million or so dollars, we'll probably have some needs for rehabilitation, for repair, for remodel, and then we'll have a funding stream to do that. And the other part that's good for us and for the voter is, at some point, if it doesn't make sense, we're not obligated. It does mean we don't get the check from the state. But if for some reason something doesn't make sense, we're not obligated. So this vote is more of saying we want to be in line, and we'll make the decision of whether to get that check at a later date.
Why would we ever pull out, though? What scenario would make you want to pull out?
Some of the scenarios are more just wherewithal, so part of the compliance is that you have to have a $500,000 permanent improvement levy.
Okay.
And I think the gist of that is the state isn't going to invest in these buildings and not have you take care of them. So to me, a $500,000 levy, a $500,000 permanent improvement levy.
Maintenance levy.
What did it?
Maintenance levy.
Maintenance levy, I apologize. A $500,000 maintenance levy makes good sense. But again, that has to be earned from the voter. So we don't need to put that in place today. Future boards will need to wrestle with that. But for us to show up at the bank teller and say, you're ready to give us the check, we're ready to take the check, they're going to say before you can give it, you need to have that $500,000 maintenance levy.
Right. Okay, thanks.
George, can you take the roll?
And I just wanted to clarify, for this vote, this is accepting their amendment to the Master Facilities Plan Commission, and then the second vote is, the following vote is for the amendment for the L project agreement, the expedited local project agreement. So Ms. Stochek,
Yes.
Mrs. Kilbane,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell.
Yes, motion carries. Next item is similar. Be it resolved that the Strongsville City Schools Board of Education approves the resolution to accept the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission Expedited Local Partnership Program First Amended and Restated Project Agreement as found in the exhibit. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Haley, seconded by Sharon. George, is there anything, I think you covered it. Is there anything additional you wanted to add?
No, this, so just in total, this is the packet that we received. So as you will see, it's one large packet with the two resolutions that need to be approved, and they were in order. So the first one, which we just did, is to accept the amended master facility plan for the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, and then the second one was to accept the amended and restated project agreement for the expedited local partnership. And then as you will go through the remaining piece of the document, it kind of gives a breakdown of how those numbers are configured building by building. And again, it's the entire accumulation of the project from what was done in beginning in 2013 until this proposal, and then any future proposals.
Any questions or comments?
Ditto.
All right, George, can you take the roll?
Yep. Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes, motion carries. George, this item is still incomplete, so should I have a discussion before I read it?
You can read it with the blank, and
Read it
then
with the blank.
during the motion, we'll, actually, no, we'll make the motion when we come to them out.
Very good.
So, yep.
All right, so at this point in the meeting, we have to decide which items that were part of the proposal that we would like to put forth in the bond, and that will help us determine the value amount to fill in here. So all of you have at your seats and the tiered system that the committee determined for which were the must-do items. For those that are listening, those must-do items include what was described before, a new K-5 school on Albion site, a new K-5 school on oh, you got it up there. Hey. Chapman site, it is tiny though. A new K-5 school on Sarrar site, a renovated K-5 school on Kinsner site, new and renovated pre-K and administration offices on the Maraski site. And then we're going to abate and demo Chapman, Farrar, Whitney, and Zellers. And the blue section below, this is part of the other needs. There's 3 items that were considered must-do. The Performing Arts Center at the high school, an athletic field house, and turfing the baseball and softball fields at the high school.
And Ms. Bissell, what I did for the board discussion, so we've got the master, which we'll just leave, that's what was recommended by the committee. And then we've got the board prioritized plan, so George, if you just click on that tab, that's where we could do, so
Did it switch?
it's the same document.
Okay.
So we will work off of that one, so any edits, we will go off of that one.
Okay. Is there, we'll kind of do this maybe part by part. I think it's easy to kind of get through the must-dos. Is there any discussion, comments, additions, changes about the items that have been determined as must-dos by the committee?
So the one thing the committee did do at the last meeting was had a healthy discussion about turf. And so turf was not originally planned for the elementaries. It is now in the recommendation. Some of the issues we run into is Kinsner doesn't have the space for it. So that becomes we talk a lot about equity, fairness, making sure that they're similar. So that's going to be a challenge at the very least. And then, although we said that and we think there's spaces for them, it wasn't part of the design, architecting from GPD from the beginning. And so there's going, I don't want to just say there's no problems. Those all need to be explored and considered. So I do have a concern about just saying we need multi-purpose turf at every elementary, along with the other turf. So that would be consideration number 1. And then going through it, we had discussed input from the surveys had a lot of performance art. This one has a lot on athletics. And are we comfortable with that balance based on what the surveys are telling us?
I had the same 2 concerns that you shared there. And the 3 of us here weren't part of that, so we are still kind of, we've heard it all, but we're in privy to all these conversations. So I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of the performing arts budget, the 1.9 million there, was all back of the house type items. Sorry, I got distracted. So things like, I need them to help me.
I'm sorry, go on.
Like the space, what'd you call it, a scene room?
At the high school for the performing arts?
Yeah.
So in the 2012 bond project, we built a scene shop. And that scene shop, so if you look at kind of back of house, there's scene shop that was built new. There's some existing dressing rooms, but the scene shop has become more of storage.
Okay, so the items that are included so far in this 1.9 are largely back of the house items, correct?
Correct.
Which is fantastic. Those serve the needs of our students. As a member of the community, in addition to being a parent, I have often wondered if we need to make improvements to the front of the house. I have been in that auditorium on multiple occasions where we have run out of seats, where there are people standing in the aisles, bringing in chairs from the cafeteria, things of that nature in order to, participate in the event. So I'm wondering if there are, similar to that, or, for example, I've had people, where do I go in for the auditorium, right? Like, do we need a large grand entrance that makes it pretty in addition to functional? Those are some items that I'm wondering, especially because, as Richard said, the survey was very heavy on performing arts. Are those the types of things that we need to consider adding to the high school performing arts at this point? And then I have similar concerns or questions about the turf. Cameron, you shared it to the board at some point. If you could share here about some of the concerns we've had at the current middle school field and what potentially turfing Albion might help remedy.
Right, so when we turfed the middle school field, we deemed that as our community field, that would be open when it's not being used for school use. It could be open for community use, and our community has definitely taken advantage of that, and it's been a great spot for a lot of different things. With that comes with its own challenges of wear and tear, people maybe not always using the right equipment on there, garbage, gum, food, things of that nature. So one concept could be if, on this proposal from the facilities is turfing the Albion football field, which is currently still there. If you turf that, that could possibly become the community field. Strongsville Middle School field could be just that, is the Strongsville Middle School field, and we could protect that asset a little longer because we would limit use to just school use. So one consideration there.
Thank you.
So Albion would be like for anyone who wanted to use it? Is that what you're
Correct,
saying?
yeah.
Okay.
So that would be if the board so chooses to turf the Albion field, that would be the one that we would say, just like it is now, the gate's open, use it as you would, as long as there's not a school purpose, it's open for anybody to use.
Why is turfing on all the elementary schools? Like, what is the benefit to that? I mean, what's the price difference? Like, I'm just not sure. When I was reading it, I was like, I didn't understand where that even came from, but why does anyone feel we need that? I mean, is there a good reason? Is it
So I'd ask
low
Ken
maintenance?
and David to come back up if they'd like to answer as representatives of the committee.
I mean, is it like
It's
low maintenance?
$450,000 per elementary. That's the price, but they'll
Sure.
share the
Yeah.
rationale.
Thank you. So we had a lot of discussion about that last week when we met, and the general consensus was it was about $500,000, $450,000 out of a $37.5 million school project. And so we felt that we were comfortable recommending that as part of the master plan for consideration, with the understanding that these are all contract prices that are going to have to get bid, that decisions are going to be made throughout the evaluative process. Once you get bids in, once you get costs and all that stuff pinned down, there was a lot of support for the idea of having multi-purpose fields available, but we felt we would include it in our recommendation, and then it would be a factor for consideration once you got through the bidding and building process.
Thank you.
A practical need is if you take a look at the elementary schools and recess and use of facilities by PE classes, they're very weather dependent, and drainage on those properties is not always great. And if you put in a multi-purpose field, you can use it more year-round for outdoor recess or for PE activities due to the drainage that's built in and the surface that could take the wear and tear. So from a practical aspect, that's where you would see the benefit there.
Haley, do you have any input on the turf fields?
I kind of feel the way you guys do about it in terms of not necessarily necessary, especially given some space constraints that we have with some of it. And while I think the other parts are crucial and important, the turf is not at the top of what needs to be done.
We have to give you a determination on how many turf fields we want to support tonight? No?
You have to give us a determination on how much money you want to spend.
Oh, just a total dollar
Oh, just a
amount.
total number?
Right, so this is a worksheet to kind of figure out what is, I don't want to speak for George, that's what you need a total dollar figure.
We need a total dollar figure. If the board wants to go out for a bond levy for the next board meeting, I'll need to prepare based on the timelines, we'll need a resolution to begin that process. And just like the operating, there's 2 steps to it. So at the next board meeting, there'll be the resolution of necessity, and then we'll get the county the county estimates from that, and then at the following meeting on November 7th, we would need to pass the second resolution to formally put the bond levy on the ballot. So what we need, in order to begin that process, we need a dollar amount of how much do we want to go out there for. We also have the 25 million that we transferred into the 070 fund available to offset any ask from this process. But of that amount, we would need to hold on to $5 million for, one, we still have the Muraski lease agreement, that in order to do anything in Muraski, we would need to pay that off. So that, depending on the timing we do that, that could be between $2 and $3 million, and then hanging on the additional $2 million for any contingencies. So my recommendation would be to apply $20 million to any of those costs.
Is there currently turf on any of the fields that are listed as Tier 2 or Tier 3, the SHS baseball, high school media center, post office, and practice field?
No.
None?
No, we just have turf at the Packatan Stadium and the middle school field.
Okay.
What I would share, Ms. Bissell, is if, right at the bottom, I know it's small, but if you have it up on your computer. So going to that idea that we need a total amount for the bond, minus what George shared as his recommendation. If you take a look at all the must-dos as currently presented from the Facilities Committee, it's $155.6 million. If you take a look at adding all of the Tier 2 or should-dos, that adds another $6.2 million. The cell in green puts those two totals together of $161.8 million. If you would do everything in the plan or the Tier 3 adds another $3.1 million. If you look at the total cost of all options, so if you did everything on this list, it would be basically $165 million. You could, as an example, if you say, hey, we are fine with the total of the must-dos of 155.6, by saying to George, that's what we want, you then have time later to figure out how you want to do that. So going to your example, the turf fields that are in here for the elementaries are about $2 million. You would have the ability at a later date to say, when we actually go and design this project, maybe that $2 million doesn't go to the turf fields, maybe it goes to the Performing Arts Center. Is that accurate, George? Okay.
Oh, so we don't have to designate like tonight?
You don't have to designate specifically, but you have to be in the ballpark, because if you don't have enough money, you're not going to be able to do other these,
Right.
there's smaller
Way I would-
shifts.
The way I think about this is we're at the stage now where we're shopping for the house and we're going to the bank and we're saying, how much are we pre-approved for? Now, that analogy addresses the dollar amount. In fact, what we're saying is the bank is the voting taxpayer. And we need to come to a decision tonight of how much money do we need to present to the taxpayer for a bond vote to say this is how much we would like the voter to entrust to us to do these projects. The voter, just like the bank, is going to look at us and say, are you worthy? So it's important for us to know, what do we want to build? What do we want to provide to the community? Because the community is going to say, well, I'm not just giving you a blank check. And so this is important, but we don't have to have it to the point of, this is exactly what we're building and this is exactly how we're building it. Those things still need some discussion, still need some planning, still need some practical of, just because we say we want this, this, and this, when the architects show up, they could say, you just can't do it. You can't fit all of that on this location or what have you. So all of that still needs to be figured out. In addition, if we look at the middle school and the high school, we went to the voters, we earned their trust, we got an amount, and then we were diligent. Everything we did, we tried to save money. And we did it so well that we were able to do more projects. So I kind of look at some of this stuff as saying, hey, if we can be successful again, the board will be able to come back and say, hey, we thought it was going to be this much money, but we were able to save whatever it is, $500,000, $1 million,
Right.
$2 million. What projects do we want to put towards that? Now, we're in an inflationary period. Everything costs more money. I don't know if lightning is going to strike twice for Strongsville, but I know that as a board, that's what we're going to want to do. And so one thing for discussion purposes is if we look at the priorities, they're tiered, and naturally my screensaver hits. They're must do, like to do, and should do. So if we just start with must do, I think that's a reasonable place to say that's our dollar amount. And then we talked about, we have our cash reserve policy of $25 million.
Right.
We apply 20 million to that and reduce that amount by 20 million, knowing that 5 million is still in play. We think part of that 5 million is going to be to pay off the Muraski cops, but that still leaves us $2 million total to work a complete project. Just like building a house, you're gonna have change orders, you're gonna have, well, we thought it was gonna be this much, but do you want to upgrade, do you want to change? And we'll work through that. But if we start there, we're roughly at a total of 155,650, and we apply $20 million to that, we're at approximately $135 million for a bond amount.
Right.
And I think that, I offer that up for discussion.
I can confidently say that, given the discussion about how we can play with that later, I'm 100% on board with must-dos, so I can give you that much. But is there any other discussion that we need to have about the should-dos? Or are we okay saying we will pick those up later should the dollar amount allow?
What would the athletic field house entail, or we have
Have you ever been to Independence, City of Independence? They have a field house. It's a multi-purpose facility. It allows you to do all the things that sometimes you do indoors.
Okay.
But it would have fields, fields is probably the wrong word, but it would have
Courts or fields.
courts.
Okay.
So you can have, you can have winter track events, you can have basketball, you can have
Volleyball, soccer, if they put.
all of that if we design it that way. And in addition, it can be meeting space
Okay.
for the community.
It's designed as a 50,000 square foot indoor facility that can be used for a variety of purposes, and those details would be fleshed out in the design process.
So they
But
could
this,
also, for now, cover the Albion turf football field that could be used for everything. People could then go to the field house instead. To use that.
possibly for indoor areas, yeah.
Could you make money on it?
You can host
Would you rent it
tournaments and
out?
things, yeah.
You could, yes.
Okay.
I'm always cautious on that because, it's a community asset. And so you were balancing, is our business to try to become a Gund Arena or what have you and try to bring in income?
No, I just
always
mean
look
as
at it
far as like
gravy.
community, like,
Yes.
I'm not saying like we advertise it to the world, but I'm just saying like, could the community, there's a lot of different
Club.
travel leagues
Right.
and
Yes.
whatnot, so those kind of things, like,
I look at it like
if you're
our-
gonna put 12 million into it, if you can make some money on it, that would be a great thing. So I'm just saying, like, in the times we're living, a lot of people are, having problems buying groceries. So I'm saying, like, when you come to people, you have to be sensitive to the fact that, well, we want turf, we want a field house, we want this, we want all the nice things, but I'm just saying, like, I want to be sensitive too, and you want to make sure that people are on board and don't feel like we're overdoing it. That's, I
Absolutely.
mean, I think everything here is great, but I'm not sure as a whole if everybody would be on board with that, or would they think, oh my gosh, they're asking for everything. That's all, just the perception of it.
I appreciate that, Sharon, and I'm wondering if that's a good defense for going with just the dark green right now and saying we're gonna ask the bond for the 155, and knowing that there are things that we left on the table for right now that were part of the recommendation, even though I know the field house is part of that, so it doesn't completely address, I don't think, your concern, but it's a start.
Right, right.
I always say it has to be reasonable, right? You're always going to have people who say we should have done everything. And
Oh,
you're always
right.
going to have people who are going to say you should have done nothing.
Right.
I think as long as I think a good path forward is to be reasonable and to be able to say, you know, we covered our bases without the Taj Mahal and without trying to, as much as I enjoy, counting bubble gum and baling wire. I think we have a good path down the middle, and I think that will earn support.
The only part I would ask the board to discuss is, as I look at this list, I look at what are things that we are going to have to address in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And if not a part of this bond issue, it may be challenging to find the funds to do that. And so the stadium renovations at the high school is the one item that I would say, whether we have turf fields or grass fields, that's a decision of the board. The stadium upgrades is something we are going to have to address, and so I just asked the board to have a discussion about that one.
How do you feel? Anyone have a feeling one way or the other about that? About adding the 2.2 to the 155?
What would the renovations entail, do we know in total, what those renovations would be?
Bathrooms, concession stands, stadium needs, press box needs, is anything I'm missing, guys? Visitor section upgrades. Asphalt work, locker rooms.
At what point would we be below standards of what is expected of our stadium, like now or a couple of years from now?
It's 20-year-old stadium, it's going to need
older
some,
than that.
is
It's
it older now?
Yeah, it's at least 22, 23 years, yeah.
So it's one of those things, Haley, I would say it's a beautiful stadium, but 22, 23 years old, it's going to need some TLC
Right.
to keep going, yeah. And I would say the complaint we get as a school district is the flow for visitors. The amenities over on the visitor side, the stands, the concessions, the lack of restrooms, the path that they have to go through all of the home side to get to the visitor side, that's the one constructive feedback we get about the stadium.
I would be comfortable adding that if necessary, especially if it's a safety or hygiene or bathrooms or, things that are necessary in order to have a certain standard of being at a level of average or above average.
And I agree with the need. In my calculus, that was we have 5 million, we have 3 million for cops. Oh, I'm sorry, certificates of participation.
That's the formal name of the lease agreement for
I thought we were paying
Maraski.
off people here.
Yeah, it's not
I'm
police.
thinking in what scenario we wouldn't spend $3 million on police officers from Maraski?
And
Like, I
paying
know
them
the
off.
parents are not thrilled, but come on.
It's a kind of mortgage.
Okay.
Is the easiest way to describe it. And we used cops 15 years ago? When did we do Maraski?
I think it was like
2005.
2005, yeah.
Yeah, so we used cops as the vehicle to borrow the money to renovate Maraski. And we still are paying that back, but to do this project, we would have to write a check to be done with it.
And the reason for that, as Richard mentioned, the COPS stand for certificates of participation, and it's just a formal name for a lease purchase agreement. So in order to enter into a COPS agreement, Maraski was used, the parcel was used as collateral. So in order for us to take essentially a wrecking ball, or to do anything to change the format with Maraski, we would either need to get permission to do so, or to pay off the debt to free us from the lease purchase agreement, and we take back ownership of Maraski. Currently, where we're at, to pay it off is about somewhere between 2 to 3 million, depending on the timing and the interest and depending on our outstanding balance at that time. If not, Maraski is under that. There's a call date in 2024 that we could do it by. After that, there's an additional 10 years left on the debt. So it'd be paid off. If we do nothing, it'd be paid off. If this wasn't a proposal and if we would have just kept going as status quo, the payoff date would have been 2035 or 2034, somewhere in that timeframe. In addition to paying it off, one of the other benefits of paying it off, now the annual principal and interest payment comes out of the permanent improvement fund. So that frees up about $300,000 to be used back to the school district.
So if we round up to 156, remove 20 million, is that a reasonable amount?
That's the must-dos, what you're saying.
Plus 350,000. So that's your gift towards the stadium upgrades?
It is a reasonable amount, because again, we're going to have to get the voters to support this. And as Sharon pointed out, there's a balancing act with that. And I think this is a reasonable balancing act. There will always be people who will just say, I would have supported more. There will always be people who say, I can't support any of it. But we need to earn the voters' trust.
So I just updated the board prioritized plan spreadsheet based on the discussion. So I took away all the dollar amounts for anything that was not a must-do and factored in the 070 fund $20 million, just so we could visually see what we're saying, or what the board is potentially saying no to, and then, as you said, Richard, rounded to 136 million.
And we also have that for each of those turfs on the Albion site, Chapman site, and Sarrar site, the 450,000 that could technically go towards the stadium too, if we decide not to do the turf thing.
It's also factored in the Kinsner site as well.
Okay, perfect.
So, yes, you're correct.
I'm okay with this plan, with the understanding that I have my eye on the stadium upgrades.
I think we all do. I want to get as much as we can, but you have to draw a line in the sand.
Well, I mean, you're spending 12 million on an athletic field house, which I have nothing against the field house. But if you're going to let the stadium go, at what point are we going to come back and renovate that then? You're going to have like a field house, but you're going to have a rundown stadium. So, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. That really doesn't make any sense to me, those two. So.
Can we do part of the price of the stadium? Like, does that make sense to do like half of what the stadium renovation would be? Or is that, I've never done this before, so
We could do
Yeah.
whatever we want. I think at the end of the day, Sharon, I'm with you, and I think the goal is to take whatever we make the bond, the dollar amount, and some of that, whether it's from the 5 million that we still have from our
Oh, right,
070,
right. Okay.
whether it's from not doing all the turf, to make that a part of the priorities of this money. It doesn't have to be portioned quite that way right now, and I guess that's what I mean when I say I have my eye on that, because for me, it's of utmost importance.
Right,
I just
right.
don't know that we have to adjust the number to get it done. Does that make sense?
Right.
with the prices of things constantly rising and inflation, are we not wise to not include it right now out of fear that we won't have those funds, or we'll be using those other funds towards something else to pay for increased prices?
All of the prices right now include a 3% inflationary increase in it.
Okay.
Oh, well, that's
So
good.
those dollar amounts there have that factored in.
Okay.
So I can live with the 156 million less the 20, so it'd be 136 for our number to plug in for the motion. Is that something we can, Sharon, is that something you can support?
Yeah, can I just look at the
Absolutely.
should-dos
Take your
just
time.
a second? So this is just the must-dos. You didn't put, what did we say? Is there anything in there that's kind of like the should-do is the tier 2? Are we going with any of the should-dos? 'Cause-
Not in the dollar
Not-
amount, but in the,
Are you in the master one, or are you in the board prioritized one?
I mean,
The way I would describe it, Sharon, is the
Here
goal,
you go.
the goal is to get as much as possible as we can, but at a certain point, I think it's incumbent on us to say this is the line at a dollar amount.
right,
And
I understand.
the board will work very hard, and it won't just be words, it'll be hiring people, like we did with the middle school and the high school, that their job is to be laser focused on making sure we squeeze every dollar of value out of every bond dollar. And, for example, we hired an owner's agent, Roger Riachi, who acted in the school district's best interest. And he made sure that every bid, every quote, everything was not just proper and correct, but it was the best we were going to get. And so those are the kinds of things I'm going to advocate, we're going to advocate for
Right.
doing again. And so can I predict the future? No. But I do think we should be able to knock off a number of the should-dos and like-to-dos. But we also need to be able to say to the voter, this is a priority, and I want to be able to say there's not fluff in here. We can disagree on certain things, but this is really what we should do for the students of our district now and for the next 30 years.
Right.
are you okay?
Yeah, I'm
of
okay.
Moving
I'm
forward.
good.
Okay, George, we'd like to amend that to say 136 million. Be it resolved that the Strongsville City Schools Board of Education authorizes the treasurer to prepare the necessary legislation to place a bond levy in the amount of $136 million on the March 2024 ballot. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Motion by Haley, seconded by Sharon. Any further discussion?
Hang on one second, just make the. So does that, just for confirmation, does that read correctly?
It does to me. Someone want to double check that? Yes. Okay, George, can you take the roll?
It was a motion by Ms. Stochek and a
Second
second
by
by Ms.
Sharon. Yep.
Ms. Cobain. Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes, the motion carries. Thank you all for a productive discussion. 3 more items here, brief, they're all similar but require independent action. Be it resolved that the Strongsville City Schools Board of Education grants approval for Michelle Bissell to attend the North Star Summit on October 25th, 2023. There is no cost to register for this event. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Haley, seconded by Sharon. Cameron, can you speak to what this is we're doing?
Yeah, so we have a partnership with Battelle for Kids. They help support our Model Mustang, our Portrait of a Graduate work. We've been with them for 4 or 5 years now, and so this is a new event that they're putting on to bring board members and business people from around the state together to learn about the importance of developing durable skills and competencies within our students. So it's a great opportunity for the board members to learn more about the importance of this work and see how we're bringing it to life in our school district.
Thank you. George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell.
Abstain.
Motion passes.
Once again, be it resolved that the Strongsville City Schools Board of Education grants approval for Richard Micco to attend the North Star Summit on October 25th, 2023. There is no cost to register for this event. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Haley, seconded by Sharon. George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
No.
Staying with it?
I'm sticking with
All right, Mrs. Bissell.
Yes. The motion
Motion carries.
carries.
And it's free, too, I mean. He's really saving money for this bond.
And finally, be it resolved that the Strongsville City Schools Board of Education grants approval for Laura Wolfhausum to attend the North Star Summit on October 25th, 2023. There is no cost. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Haley, seconded by Sharon. George, can we take the roll?
Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bissell.
Yes. Motion carries. That brings us to miscellaneous. Does anyone have any miscellaneous items tonight?
I just think it's incumbent on us to share how exciting that vote was and all of the work before to lead up to this, but we'll be able to point to this is the point in time where we drew a line in the sand for the future of our district.
Proud to be a part of it. Thank you, Richard. Anyone else? All right. Final item tonight. I have a motion to enter into an executive session to,
Consider the employment of a public employee.
can someone make that motion?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Haley, seconded by Sharon. We, go ahead, take the roll.
Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bissell.
Yes. We will enter into executive session at 9:15 PM. We don't have any anticipation of further business. So we thank you for your attention and have a good night.